Today on Paint a Beautiful Picture, we are going to talk about the principle of strengths and weaknesses. This is episode number 206. It's great to have you with me today. I was talking to a young couple the other day, and I asked each of them in turn, what is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? It was fascinating that one of them shared, well, this is my greatest strength. And the other said, oh, that's probably my greatest weakness. And then when the other one said, this is my greatest strength, the other said, this is probably my greatest weakness. And I said, this is perfect, so you know. And it is. If two people come together and one has a very strong area and the other person is weak in it, and this one has a very strong area and the other person is weak in it, they will make a very effective, usable unit. It's not a problem if you have similar strengths. I'm not saying that, but it is more normal, since opposites attract, that areas where you are really strong, your partner probably isn't, and areas where they are very strong, you probably aren't. And that's perfectly okay. So you already have this dynamic going on where couples are trying to navigate who's good at what and sharing responsibilities and allowing someone else to do it, even though you think you can do it better, or you know what you're doing, or that doesn't really please you, or that's not right, which happens when you have two people with similar strengths. They have different styles and different ways of executing their strengths, so it takes a lot of navigation and coming together and maybe cooperatively working on a thing, whether that's in the home or outside of the home, that requires certain strengths. Then you throw in your kids. Wow, wow, wow. Does that ever get fun? And I'm not kidding you about that, because your kids will have certain strengths, just innate abilities that they have. You don't even know where some of those things came from. It's a fact. And you need to learn how to monopolize upon their strengths, even take the things that they're pretty good at and strengthen them some more, reinforce them, encourage them. That's like a person who has the right build to be a bodybuilder, but if they never flex those muscles and use those muscles and pick up weights, they're not going to become what they could have been. The potential is there, but the development is not. You want this for your children when you see the areas of their life where they do have strengths and they do have capacities. You want to build and strengthen and develop those things with them. You want to acknowledge their strengths. I had a very good friend as a child whose mom was a quite large woman, quite large. I mean, in excess of 400 pounds, quite large. But she was really, actually, she was quite mobile. Anyway, she loved to do puzzles and she could see things and how they fit together so well. And I didn't notice as a child that she was the same way about problem solving. And she taught me, truthfully, how to look at a puzzle and to become better at putting puzzles together, to the point that I even now I can do them so quickly, because I don't just see the shape, but I see the color and I see the design, and I have good discrimination of varying shades of blues or reds or whatever. I can just kind of monitor the pieces, even when there are hundreds and hundreds of them, and pretty quickly find a particular piece that goes into an area. Not by looking at the picture, but by looking at what's around it. And I'm actually pretty fast at resolving things that are less tangible by looking around and paying attention and receiving cues and having a certain understanding of what needs to go where and how that needs to happen. I think that was born in me, but she developed it significantly. You need to aim for that with your children's strengths and develop them and exercise them, make use of them. If you're not really sure how to go about that, I don't think in 15 minutes I can explain it to you, but look at the ways that your child just naturally moves and excels, whatever that may be. Math, they're an extremely good mathematician. They grasp words easily. They're very good at spelling. A-S, capital I-TOLDYOUBEFOR, comma, MYSONSLEARNED, Tospellveryarly! Exclamation point. As I told you before, my sons learned to spell really early because my former husband and I spelled everything, and I mean quickly. And by the time they were 3 years old, they already knew what we were talking about when we spelled. Both of them have written quite a number of books. They know multiple languages. Oh my gracious. Whether or not they were born with that, which I think they might have been, both of them, they certainly developed those things by their exposure to books and hearing the language spelled repeatedly in front of them. They just grabbed onto it. What is your child really good at? Where are your child's strengths? Develop those things, encourage those things, support those things, help them exercise those things so that they will make the maximum use in their life of their potential in the strengths that they have. Then look at their weaknesses and, oh, be pretty courageous to look at your own. A lot of weaknesses can be overcome, compensated for, or plain old eradicated, depending. Okay? I'm not the world's greatest person at math, and because of that, I worked extremely hard at it, and I'm okay at it now. And yes, I did get straight A's in pharmacological math because I never wanted to hurt any of my patients, and it took it to understand dosing and how things work so you didn't hurt anybody ever. You didn't want to cause harm. You find a motivation for them to start to work past their weakness. You help them learn how to compensate for it. People who are dyslexic, people with ADHD, we learn how to compensate for a lot of things because we have to. Our mind doesn't quite work like everyone else's, and we have to learn tricks and concepts to help us to overcome those. Every one of us has weaknesses. People who are somewhat physically weak or frail, I know a young man that had juvenile arthritis, and there were a lot of sports he couldn't participate in, things like that. So he participated in debate. He really learned to use his mind very actively, and he still got to be competitive, though he couldn't go out and do it physically. He compensated for his area of weakness. Every single one of us has things that we are really strong in, really weak in, and semi-so-so, okay, whatever, in. All of us. We need to learn to develop and strengthen our strengths. We need to learn to compensate for or overcome our weaknesses. And those things that are kind of, okay, whatever, we can look at, make an assessment, and choose where we want to get stronger and where we just don't really care that much, and so we're not going to expend a great deal of energy. As a parent, you get to foster some of those things very early, 2, 3 years old, and then you need to let your child start to make decisions. She might have a really different idea about which one of her strengths to monopolize on than you do. And you need to respect that to the best of your ability because, after all, it is her life. She doesn't necessarily need to neglect the work that you've begun, but she might select things and put them in higher priority than you would have, and she needs to have that option available to her. It's who she's going to be. It's the development in her world as the person that she's going to become. As we learn to respect and literally rejoice about other people's strengths and to acknowledge our own weaknesses, we have the most likelihood of having a healthy, stable relationship with our mate and of establishing a healthy and stable home environment where our children can develop. It's really fascinating. I want you to ask yourself this question today. What is my greatest strength? What is my greatest weakness? In the next few days, ask your mate, what is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? Not everyone is going to have an answer in 5 minutes. Some people might actually take a couple hours or a couple days to chew it over, but it's a really good conversation to have, and it's a really interesting thing to start to look at and then to say, okay, within your own heart, not to the rest of the world maybe, I'm going to start to develop my strengths. I'm going to work and exercise and put them into practice, and I'm going to work on compensating for or overcoming or just making adjustments about my weaknesses, or I'm going to admit my weaknesses and let someone who's really strong in that area, possibly my mate, work alongside of me, and so They can handle that. I'll handle other things. And we'll look at our family unit and our children. We'll let them start to utilize their strongest areas and exercise them, develop them, get even stronger in those ways. And we will also help them develop the principle that everyone has weaknesses, and that's okay. No one's going to criticize you or tell you you're stupid because you're lousy at math or you're not a good speller. But we are going to help you to get stronger in those areas to the maximum of your capacity. And we're also going to help you see ways that you can compensate for the areas where you're weakest. I hope this has been an interesting and helpful conversation for you. I'm so glad you were with me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.